Hello, friends. Welcome to tonight's live chat. It's really good to see you. I see you guys chatting it up in the chat box already, and I see different ones signing in. So it's really good to see. Welcome tonight. I'm hoping we have absolutely no issues with audio or technology. So please let me know if you cannot hear me or, if there's anything going on. I'll try to rectify it. But it's good to see you guys. Tonight's live chat is an interesting one because I had a situation where I was talking about a former colleague who had kind of like this disposition of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Now, you guys, when you saw my what do you call that thing? Thumbnail, I'm sure you were thinking, what in the world is she talking about? Oh my God, I can relate to this. My dad's like that. My sister's like that. My friend is like that. My neighbors are like that. You know what I mean? So I'm sure you guys were thinking, oh my God, she's not going to talk about this tonight, but I really want to talk about it. And here's why. For the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about some pretty intense things, right, guys? We've been talking about manipulation and triangulation. We've been delving into a lot of relationship dynamics, a lot of toxicity, behavioral patterns, lack of boundaries, lack of identity, controllers, the list goes on. And so I thought, you know what? We need a conversation about a switchable, emotionally changing person who constantly shifts. It's like moving, what do they call it? The goalpost. Every time you think you understand this person, they go another place, right? And you say, you know what? It's okay. I think I can bend with this person. I can be flexible with this person. Let's try it this way, right? So you may bend a little bit to make things work. Well, what happens? Well, that person goes and moves the post again. And sometimes it's not in a straight line. Sometimes it's over that way, up that way, over this way, down that way. And you're like, where are you? Who are you? Right? And so I can attest to the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mentality personally and professionally. And so you're going to get that in tonight's live chat. Now, let me give you a little bit of background of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of mentality. We have what is known as a duality of human nature. We have a duality of human nature, meaning we're split in the middle. Most of human nature is, right? There's not just one side. There's a different side to you, your family, your friends, your spouse. There's a different side to me. Most people really only see two sides of me, which is the nice Tamara, the knowledgeable, well-informed, educated Tamara. And then if you are going to push my buttons by doing something that's unethical, wrong, involves jealousy, intimidation, harming somebody else, or just completely doing something that's unjust, you're going to see me get mad. So there's only really, two sides you're going to see to me. There's two sides of you, most likely, that we're all going to see, right? There are some research studies, however, that believes that we don't necessarily have just a duality of human nature, that there's many facets of who we are. And I can agree with that, right? We have the spiritual side, we have the religious side, emotional, psychological, physiological, social sides of us. But just for the purposes of this conversation tonight, let's go with the theory of duality, that there's two really prominent sides to who we are. And so the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mentality says Dr. Jekyll was a very socially astute, organized, socially mature, and responsible individual. That's Dr. Hyde. Okay, he was the responsible one. Now, I'm sorry, Dr. Jekyll. I'm sorry. Dr. Jekyll is the more socially mature and in control one, right? Mr. Hyde was the complete opposite. He is the impulsive one who has no control over his impulses whatsoever. And so the idea of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde is that we've got this duality of human nature that says this is the good part, this is the not so good part. And this makes relationships difficult because really, if we want to come out of using the term Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, we can use the term splitting. You guys know what that is, right? And imagine dealing with a family member like this. I'm sure all of you, most of you on the channel know what that means and what it looks like. Splitting, if we don't want to look at the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing and kind of psychoanalyze people in our world using that lens, then we can look at splitting. And to me, that's a more modernized way of saying Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? Now, splitting is kind of like this conflict of opposing mental forces or mental views. And within that person's mind, there's one force and there's another force. And they compete with each other. And sometimes they overlap, and sometimes they're a big ball of confusion. And that conflict of opposing mental states comes out. It comes out in your narcissistic mother's continually disrespectful behavior. It comes out in your father's arrogant disposition when he can't take no for an answer. He can't accept an expectation. Neither can he accept correction. You may find that the conflict of the opposing mental forces comes out when something happens and you are demanding something, or you are putting a boundary up, or you are shifting the way that you behave. The other person can't handle it, right? I think we all, to a certain extent, can split. And sometimes it's adaptive. You have to sometimes look at things in more than one way, right? I think that's daily life too. But I don't think splitting and creating chaos and harm is a normal everyday thing. When we are talking about borderline personality disorder, when we are talking about a sociopath or a very narcissistic individual who doesn't know how to control their emotions, splitting is that black and white thinking that creates the problem. I'll give you an example. I had a client so many years ago. Thankfully, I no longer work in community mental health. Because community mental health was really difficult for the reason, you could walk into this community mental health center and you could say, you know what, I would like to start therapy. Is there a therapist here that could schedule an appointment with me? You don't even have to call. You just walk in, okay? A walk-in clinic, if you will. And there's a lot of people that come off the streets. There's a lot of people who are homeless. There's a lot of people who have drug addiction and substance abuse issues. And there's also individuals who are going through psychotic breaks or a psychotic crisis that walks off the street and comes into a community mental health center, and says, I need to schedule an appointment. Is there anyone who can see me? So I was in something like that so many years ago. I want to say it was 2018, somewhere around in there. And I remember having a client that split all the time. She was not diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Neither did she meet any criteria for borderline personality. What happened is she had gotten so used to controlling everybody in her world that when it was time for her to accept no for an answer, to meet an expectation, or to accept a boundary, she would switch, right? And she would switch from compliant, caring, and intelligent to emotional, psychotic, raging, and just really threatening to everybody else. And what she would do is have internalized emotions that she didn't want to talk about, she didn't want to address, because it would bring out those ugly sides of herself she didn't want to show anyone. And when she was triggered, she would hold it in, and then she would go home and act like a raving animal. Why do I say it like that? Because she would. She tore up her kid's bedroom, tore it to shreds, brought a picture into the community guidance center for me to see during one of her appointments, literally tore her kid's room up. The child was 5 years old. She snatched everything off the walls in the house. She tore up things, tore the baby's dresses off the wall. Her daughter had I'm trying to think of that Disney character, Snow White, had a Snow White dress that she wore for Halloween. Mom tore it to shreds. Okay. She was throwing things all over the room. And thank God for her very wise and intelligent 17-year-old son, because what did he do? He hit record on the phone. And so he sent me that video by email, and I looked at my email and I click on this video, and she's literally growling. She's spitting. She's cursing. She's sweating. She's like pulling her hair out. She's pounding her fist. And her 5-year-old was terrified, And, she's just tearing up this kid's room and telling the 5-year-old, clean this mess up. And then she leaves out of the room, slams the door. And the baby had like this mirror over top of her cute little bedroom door, and the mirror just broke and shattered. I actually had to call Child Protective Services because she wasn't fit to be a mother of a 5-year-old. But that's neither here nor there. What scared me about that is she came into the appointment, which was 2 weeks later, and decided to play like everything was fine. Hi, Miss Tamara, how are you? And I said, I'm doing well. How are you? And of course, if you want to play that game, I'll play it with you until I can get you to a place where we can talk about your bad behaviors, because something's wrong here, seriously. So, I was nice about it. Doing well. How are you? How's your past 2 weeks been? And she was trying to explain it to me, and she played it off for the full 45 minutes of the session. We had 15, 20 minutes left over. And I remember saying to her, if you're not going to broach the topic, then I think I'm going to do it, because we have a serious problem here. And she didn't know her son sent me the video by email. What it showed for me was a splitting Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde disposition. I'm going to act like a raving lunatic, for lack of a clinical term, in the life of my 5-year-old who doesn't know anything about this scary life. And then I'm going to come to therapy, dress nice, do my hair nice, wear my jewelry, and act like nothing's happening. And I'm going to sit in front of my therapist and hope she believes me. And the scary part of that was not only did CPS remove the 5-year-old temporarily until mom got mental help, but she faced some charges too, because she assaulted her son the day after. This is an example of growing up in a household with a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, whether it's mom or dad. Now, how did she split? Well, when I addressed her about the issue, she started seeing me as an enemy, right? Because what she wanted to sell to me was a well-rounded, calm, level-headed woman, right? The reality was she was not. She could play the part and she could get away with it with people who couldn't see her, but that really wasn't who she was. And so after she left out of that session, her desire to split me into good and evil, dark or light, right? It was a very polarized view of, you're not what I thought you were. Well, would you think I was naive? I mean, so there were pieces of her that split me, the psychiatrist that was medicating her, the guidance center, the case managers, her own family, her coworkers, her boss. Her boss had to come to me because she tore up the store she was working in. So this is the reality of some cases where there's splitting and there's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of personality. And it's a very frightening thing. Now, let me also say, before I go to the chat box, let me also say that with individuals who have this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of attitude, mentality, behavioral pattern, we can also say that there are triggers to the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character. Rigidity can also be a trigger, right? I'm not going to let you just get away with what you want to get away with me. There's a boundary, right? Rigidity for you may be, you know what? I don't like that you do A, B, and C, and I'm going to tighten up the boundaries here because you're not respecting me. Consider this being a sibling of yours. Maybe you don't like your sibling driving over to your house late at night, unannounced, knocking on your door, asking to talk to you about something, right? And as soon as you put that boundary up and say, I'm not that kind of a person. I love you. I care about you, but you're not going to run all over me. Once you put that boundary up, right, that person who is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character, attitude or disposition is probably going to switch on you. How? Because now you've set something in stone that they don't like. So that's a trigger, right? Abrupt change can be a trigger to a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mentality. Abrupt change. I'm going to change you from this day to that day. You're not allowed to do that anymore. Please don't talk to me like that anymore. I don't like when you do A, B, and C. I've never told you, but now I'm telling you. Abrupt change. They don't like that either. They like things to be predictable. They don't like it to be unpredictable. Most of these characters can also be triggered not only by a rule, an expectation, but also a boundary. If you set a really firm, fair boundary, they hate that. Look out, because you are going to be split, right? There's going to be a process, I should say, of splitting, because you're going to be split down the middle and seen as the dark one, the evil one, the attitudinal one, the angry one, the not so nice one, because you have set something in place that they don't like. That shows more of an issue with them and less of an issue with you, but they don't see it that way. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mentality can also become a defense mechanism. So you want to look out for that as well. Sometimes if you see someone switch in a matter of seconds, if they switch from A to B or dark to light, or they have a disposition that's very switchable and changeable, it doesn't take much to change their attitude, their mood, their disposition. You want to watch out for that kind of a person, because they're going to pull you into their world of confusion. They really do live in a world of confusion. Imagine feeling like two different people all the time. And we're not talking about dissociative identity disorder, where it was formerly known multiple personality disorder. We're not talking about that, where there's a true shift in character and attitude, sometimes even how you look. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this kind of, what's the word that I want to say? It's like a defense and mental mechanism that is used to kind of see the world. It's like a lens, You're either going to do things my way, or I'm going to see you this way. You're either going to allow me to walk all over you, or I'm going to see things this way, right? So there's kind of like this fragmentation of consciousness. It's like all these different fragmented pieces to the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And there's over idolizing and devaluing. So let me repeat that. There's often over idolizing and devaluing. You're never the same person. You're never good with some characteristics of just simply being human, who makes mistakes, gets upset, the list goes on. For a person who has a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde mentality and disposition, it's scary. Different pieces of who they are is fragmented, and they see the world in a fragmented way. So the once idolized Ashley Dickerson, who's a TV model and a very nice person, right? This is an example. And they're held up here, is no longer up here. Now they're down here on the ground. Why? Because Ashley Dickerson said, I don't accept that behavior from you. Ashley Dickerson said, you're not going to call me at all times of the night. You're not going to email me 17 times and expect a response. You're not going to disrespect me and think I'm going to let you get away with it, right? And so what does the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde attitude and behavior do, or the disposition? Well, that person goes within, starts thinking negatively. They start feeling negatively about themselves and you. They start feeling kind of in a mental place or emotional place of conflict, right, within themselves, and they can't manage their emotions. Neither can they see the world in gray. Everything is black or white. There's no gray. There's no in between. There's no such thing as being human. There's no such thing as making a mistake. There's no such thing as being, more than one person. If you don't fit their idea of you, then you are completely wrong. And that's how that goes. That's the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Okay, let me just say here briefly before I go to the chat box, because you guys are really chatting it up. So I want to engage you a little bit. We're going to talk about the common signs and issues of people like this in your world. If you have parents like this, it's devastating. Imagine living in the shoes of the 5-year-old that I just talked to you about, having a mother like that who doesn't just flip out and tear up a bedroom and a living room one time. They do it multiple times. Why? Because they have a character and personality pathology. There's a character disturbance. It's not human. It's not, I'm human and I just flipped. It's not, I'm upset right now and I'll calm down. It's not, I'm acting this way because life is hard on me right now, but this is not who I am. It's not that. It's this is a character disturbance. It's a character pathology. You're not going to change it. And so imagine being that 5-year-old who has to look at her mother and see this grown woman that she looks up to protect her, tearing her room to shreds. Imagine that. And then later in life, by the time she hit 11, 12, 13, mom was still doing it. You know, imagine coming home from school, seeing your bedroom torn to shreds. Why? Because mom had her episode again. Dad had his episode again. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, black and white, you know, all good or all bad. So we're going to talk about the common characteristics of these individuals. I'm going to give you a little bit of research. The research is kind of interesting, just a little bit of it, because there's so much. I'm just going to pull out the bigger pieces of the puzzle. And then I'm going to share with you what this impact on you is. You know, you may be a friend, a sibling, a child to somebody like this, and you're going to want to know what this kind of an individual is. Let me also clarify, if I haven't already, that we can all have different sides to ourselves, right? And it's very common for us to be in different moods. Some people are in a glob of moods and they can't figure it out. Sometimes I'll ask the clients to see me for therapy, especially the kids. I'll say something like, yeah, you just seem really conflicted. You know, it seems like you're happy, but then you're a little sad, but then you're a little anxious and a little restless. And sometimes if I'm talking to an adolescent, the kid will be like, that's true, Miss Tamara, I am. I just don't know what this emotion is. You know, and we'll work through it over the course of many sessions, because we all can exist in a variety of emotions. You know, when my mom, who 2 months ago had a mini stroke, you know, when she was in the hospital, didn't even know who anybody was or how she was going to get out of that situation. I remember tears just going down my eyes. But when she opened her eyes the next day and called me and my brothers, and she was very with it and on and aware, I was happy, but then I was sad, and then I was conflicted, and then I was worried, and then I was anxious. And yeah. And so we all can have that experience, right? So we're not talking about that. We're talking about a person who exists within a fragmentation of consciousness. There's fragmented pieces of their character, like broken glass, and they tend to kind of run over us, you know, and really make us feel like, is it me? Right? Am I the one? No. It's the person who lives in a fragmented reality. Okay. Let me say hello to you guys. Felix, hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. Hope you're doing well. Fairy Girl, always love to see you with those dabs. Thank you for the positivity. James McDonald, I know you can relate to this. So welcome. So glad to see you here tonight. When you mentioned something to me, I think you may have, I responded to your email. Then you responded to me. Yeah, you replied back to me. And I think you were saying something about this. And I mentioned, either it was on YouTube or an email, I mentioned there's going to be a conversation about this. So that was superb timing, because this was the conversation for tonight. So I hope it's going to be helpful. Hattie A, hello, welcome. Good to see you back tonight. My friend Shmita, I was reading your comment earlier. Yes, it is an interesting conversation. I don't think we talk about it enough as a field of psychology, right? But it's an issue that is an issue, and we need to talk about it. So good to see you. Lupita, Lorefit, Clandestine Girl 16X, Orlando as well. Hello to all of you. Glad to see you. Clandestine Girl 16, I hope I'm saying that right. 16X says, can't wait for this. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are relating. I see all your comments. So MS, good to see you. Welcome back. Says, excellent topic. Sounds very familiar to me. Ready to take notes. That's awesome. Princess Aztec, hello and welcome. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Sun and Sunflowers. Yeah, thank you so much. We had a rough night last night. My mom was here, and you know, she was so restless. You know, stroke survivors have an internalized restlessness sometimes after the fact. And I'm just learning about this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like having a toddler. But it is what it is, right? When you love somebody, you just go with it. So I was up until 4 a.m. And so here I am. So if my hair looks bad, my eyes are crossing, it's my mom's fault. Sun and sunflowers, good to see you. Always good to see you. Ellie Wynn, good to see you as well. It's not a sibling, so we're good. We're good. Good to see you, Ellie Wynn. Unaverage Joe, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. Unaverage Joe says, might it be fair to say that a reprobate mind then makes the person a child of the devil? Well, okay, so if we're going to bring in the religious piece, let me explain what this means. A part of the Bible speaks about a reprobate mind. Okay, so we're talking about the book of Romans, and a reprobate mind is really a mind that has been turned away from righteousness. It's a mind that has become really darkened and evil because of a pattern of actions that kind of leads you there. So it's almost like a what's the word? It's like a punishment for being dark and following after evil. And so your mind kind of develops over time based on that, you know? An example of this, just very briefly, and I'm going to continue on. An example of this would be what I often tell my clients: you have to be careful with what you take in. We kind of become over time what it is that we allow to seep into our spirit, to seep into our heart, to seep into our soul, and even our mind, right? And so if you want to follow the road of darkness, then you do any and everything that's dark, right? If you want to follow the road of righteousness and the light, you follow all the things that's there. But according to the book of Romans in the Bible, if you have this desire to kind of lean towards evil and darkness, you're going to become that over time. And so there, according to Romans, there is no way out of that reprobate mind. Okay. And so sometimes, you know, depending on whatever the religious ideology is of a church or a person, it could mean over time that you are the child of the devil, if you will, for an average Joe. I'm not really sure we could go that way. And I could pick and pull this apart, okay, all day. I really think that is a question to pray about and to ask God about and see what he shows you. That's what I suggest there. Okay. For those of you who do not know, my mom became a pastor over time. She never went into a church, but she did the education. She did the theology. My grandfather was a pastor for over 50 years. So you're talking to, and I walk in a Christian faith, for those of you who don't know. So you're talking to somebody who understands this, though. Figured I would break it down a little bit. Allegory, I hope I'm saying that correctly, 628. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Ash Shakur Whitaker, good to see you back. Hello and welcome. Okay. James McDonald says, in psychology, I have heard the reference to the different selves, the actual self, the idea self, the public self, and the hidden self that no one knows and or sees but you. Yeah, absolutely. That's another ideology. Thank you for mentioning that. Absolutely. We can also say that in terms of philosophy too, right? Sigmund Freud was really good at this. You know, he kind of split up the human personality and the human mind into the id, the ego, and the superego, you know? And Piaget, who's kind of like this child development prodigy, if you will, or expert, he also kind of broke up different developmental stages that we all go through in mindsets and behaviors. So that goes with what I was saying earlier. It's like a duality of human nature. There's more than one view of us, you know? Momtude, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Welcome back tonight. Don Juan, hello. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Momtude says something that's really helpful. She says that might give the children PTSD. Yes. Are you talking about when I talked about the mother, having a mother that's just tearing everything up and throwing things and breaking things and so forth? Definitely. That young lady does have PTSD. Orlando says possessed. Well, I can't disagree. You know, sometimes you do want to tag certain people possessed because you can't believe what it is that they are doing, you know. Andrew Mercer, hello and welcome to tonight's controversial chat. As I'm going through the comments and I'm responding, I'm like, wait a minute, I should have had a disclaimer on this, that we were going to briefly talk about religion, and the list goes on. Andrew Mercer says, after the Snow White dress, that would have been it for me, quite frankly. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. The good glow. Hello, welcome. Happy Hour Friday. That is awesome. Glad to have you back. Axe the Edge. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Axe the Edge. Axe the Edge. Let me get this right. Says she was right. You were not what she thought you were. Naive. Oh man, can I take that printed out and put it up in my office as like in a picture frame? Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that, Axe the Edge. Thank you. Ellie Wynn, I'm going to highlight this. Do you guys have Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde neighbors? I'm just going to say, when my mom was raising us, we moved a lot. We moved a lot because my mom was kind of like this kind of mom that wanted to expose her children to the world. And so we lived in a variety of neighborhoods and we bounced around. So, when I think back in my history, we had some Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde neighbors for years. And for those of you who have neighbors who are on a roller coaster ride like that, it just doesn't it boggle the mind? 1 minute your neighbor is smiling and waving at you while he's getting his paper out of the mailbox and getting his mail. And the next day he's rolling his eyes at you and cursing you out. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? It's way too unpredictable. MS says, my mom did similar things to me during my childhood, coming home to see all the dresser drawers open, clothes all over the place. Such a mess. She refused to clean it up, acted like it never happened. Yeah, absolutely. That's when you know that there is a character disturbance here. There's a character pathology. This is not a mood. This is a part of who they are. This is how they abruptly change. This is fragmented pieces of who they are. Sorry, guys. These are fragmented pieces of who they are. This is not a normal person who's just in a mood, and sometimes, and I've seen this, even in my current practice and even in past years, wherever I have been a therapist and worked, there's a lot of parents who will come in and a lot of individuals, adults who will come in and say, I don't know what got into me that day. Or they may say something like, oh, yeah, that was the worst day of my life. My boss did A, B, and C. Or they may downplay it and minimize it as, I'm just a frustrated parent doing what a parent does, right? I've seen different parts of the spectrum, and I think there's no excuse for this. None. There's no excuse to terrorize your family. There's no excuse to put everybody in a mental bondage, right? Because when somebody switches like that from Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you're now in a prison in your mind, because now you've got to try to tease apart what's reality and what's not. Am I really to blame for this or am I not? Am I really seeing this correctly or am I not? It really messes, and you'll see this later as I get into this a little bit more. It messes with your reality and your perception of reality. And over time, you become a prisoner of your own mind, because it's hard to shut your mind off and go to sleep at night when you're trying to process up here. What did I do? What didn't I do that made this like this? Can I blame myself? Where did that come from? Why would she say that? Why would he do that? Right? And so you become a prisoner. It's a very daunting place to be, and especially when you're a child. I did see you, Axe to Edge. I see you. And always appreciate you from Barbados. I want to go there one day in my life. Coffee Bean Lee, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Says, a bit of my childhood and failed marriages. I used Jekyll and Hyde growing up, and now to explain how it is that no or boundaries set them off. It took me a while to understand this. Okay, a little bit choppy, but I get you. Boundaries does set off the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And it also sets off a person who idolizes you and devalues you, right? I've had clients like that in the past. They hold you up as the therapist in such a bright light that you're almost like a celebrity to them. And then once you start coming down on the negative behaviors that they are exhibiting, oh, I don't like her anymore. I don't care for him over there too much anymore. And I've been in situations where clients will come in the past and they'll say, I didn't like my old therapist. And I'll ask, I'll say something like, Is there any reason why? Or, we all have different, emotions and thoughts and feelings. And maybe that person just didn't click with you. And they may say something like, well, she was a great therapist until she told me that I was wrong, that I'm to blame for the divorce, and then it becomes very clear that, oh, I get you, you split. And you are a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And when a boundary, this is for you, Coffee Bean Lee, when a boundary is put in place, or when reality hurts, now they're evil, right? So keep in mind, guys, that this is a defense mechanism for some people as well. It's a mental defense and an emotional defense. It's my walls are way up here. You are to blame, not me, right? Laura O'Neill, hello, welcome back. Good to see you. Sun and Sunflower says, bear with me, guys. We're going to get back into the content here in just a little bit. Sun and Sunflower says, I worked with someone who had a split personality. She went to therapy. She was very self-aware sometimes. She can even tell you why they do the things they do. Yep. A lot of abuse in their life. Yeah, absolutely. Abuse and trauma can lead to this. So I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not an excuse, though. It's not. But sometimes there's a reason for the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? James McDonald says, my parents' split personality affected so many of my relationships in later life due to my own insecurities and lack of trust for people, can put on high alert and self-defense mode. Yep, I agree. Thank you, Ellie Wynn. Yes, you're welcome. Okay, let me keep moving. Lemon Squeeze. If I see Starburst, is Starburst on here tonight? I get so happy when I see Lemon Squeeze and Starburst. Lemon Squeeze, hello, welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Okay, bear with me. Clandestine Girl 16X says, my mother would rip our bedrooms apart and throw things away while we were at school, and we'd have to clean up the mess. She'd dump our drawers, our dresser drawers, and empty our closet. Tamara, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. That is horrible. I'm so sorry. Because it's not just coming from school and going into this bedroom that's torn to shreds. That's the painful part. But let's add a layer of pain to that, which is a loss of trust in that parent, right? Because now I see that you're willing and able to come against me. That's the psychoanalytic view of that dynamic, that you've now torn my sacred place, my bedroom. Most kids, you try to snatch them out of their bedroom or put up one of those caution X's on their door and say, look, please come to the living room and sit and talk with us. Please come to the kitchen. And the kids are like, no, I have stuff to do in my room. Excuse me. That's kind of their safe place. So when a child's room is torn to shreds, that not only speaks to the reality that you've now assaulted my safe place, but the pain on top of that is I can no longer trust you. And so that's a double whammy. It's a blow, right? And I've seen kids like this in therapy with me, and I feel lost sometimes as a therapist, because when the parent is clearly the problem, what do you do, right? Other than try to protect, you report to Child Protective Services, you try to get the parent help, but it's a sad reality. So Clandestine Girl 16X, I'm sorry you had to go through that. I think it's very traumatizing. And what's even more traumatizing is you make the mess and then I have to clean it up. So thanks for violating my space, showing me that you have no self-control. And then on top of that, really cementing into my mind a memory that is seared. I'm not going to forget this, And unfortunately, it's a very immature move for most parents who do those things. DD, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's controversial chat. DD says, feels even worse when the parents covertly behave this way and then excuse the bad behavior with religion. Yeah, that's a good point. I've seen that before. Yeah. I once had a kid in therapy. I'm going to share this with you. I once had a kid in therapy a couple of years ago, maybe 5. The cutest 10-year-old I've ever seen. He was just the cutest kid, smart, intelligent, bright, well-spoken. The list goes on. Mom and dad were raising a wonderful kid. And then they came to the United States, and he just grew and developed over time. I was so proud of him. But I remember having a session with him and his parents. And, he says, I asked the question, because I had all 3 of them in session for a family session. And I asked him the question. I asked, I was going to say his name and I can't do that. So I had to kind of backtrack a little bit, guys. But I remember asking him, how do you feel about being in therapy with mom and dad? And he honestly and genuinely said, I like being in therapy with my mom and dad, but I feel like my mom and dad needs their own therapy. And so, they were inquisitive and kind of looking like, wow, he said that. And so I said, really? Well, can you tell us why? Do you want to share? And so he sat there and he said, excuse me, he says, my mom, a couple weeks ago, he says, Mom, I don't mean this in a bad way, but you really scared me. He says, Mom, you start throwing my shirts around. You start ripping my shirts. He says, I don't understand why, just because I came in late. He said 10 o'clock was my curfew, but I came in at 10:20. He said, it wasn't my fault. I came in late, and he's trying to explain himself. And Dad cuts him off and says, honor thy mother and thy father, that thy days will be many. Right? So threw up a defensive scripture verse. And I remember sitting there like, oh my God, you just shut this whole thing down. And this is the reality sometimes of kids who are pastors' kids, or, they go to church, they're coming from a really religious family. But it was a major piece of invalidation. And it was heartbreaking. He was trying to express himself, and Dad just throws the scripture out there. And I'm just like, this is a nice way to kind of calm the storm and get the attention off of the mother. But I do have certain pieces of myself as a therapist where I say, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. And so I ended up coming back around to it at the end of the session, believe it or not. Helene Webster, hello, glad to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Yeah, she says, I referred to my ex-husband by this term. I believe it. Ooh, marrying somebody like that is rough, right? It's rough. Patrick Black 1, thank you so much for that. That's so sweet, and you're welcome. Patrick Black 1 says, I'm trying my best to be a better person. We all are, right? We're all kind of on that bettering of the self journey. At least we should be. He goes on to say, I'm proud of everyone here too. Yeah, I empathize and sympathize with trauma. Yeah, thank you so much. That's really humble. All right, you're going to be the last one. I'm going to get back to the chat box, but let's get some content under our belt, guys. So what are some common behaviors of the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde? Well, consider that these kind of individuals have a disturbed character. They have I always call it a character pathology. It's an illness of character, and it is not easy to medicate and sometimes throw into therapy to shift and change, right? So another way to look at a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde character is really this disturbed affective and cognitive function. They have a lot of disturbed affective and cognitive function. They don't know how to control their emotions, and they don't know how to process cognitively where they should be, what they should and should not say, what the outcome possibly could be, right? Of switching up on a person, splitting a person, being unfair with a person. So they have a disturbed affective and cognitive function. They also tend to have a lot of shifts in their mind, and sometimes they chatter and talk to themselves, right? Oh, my brother over there looked at me like that. That must mean he hates me. Who does he think he is? How dare he? He had an affair on his wife. How dare he look at me like that? Now he's looking at me like I'm a total idiot. And so they have these conversations. I had a client many years ago when, even before I became a therapist, I was in graduate school training and I had to do an internship. And one of my quote unquote internship clients was like this. And so she would chatter to herself all the time. And sometimes she would be in the waiting room, looking around the waiting room. And I remember coming to the waiting room to get her, to call her back. And I decided to kind of hold on because I saw her looking at different ones in the waiting room. And her look was a look of, I'm being cautious. Don't talk to me. Stay over there. Don't get in my space, and you could see her wheels turning. She's wondering why different ones, she was highly paranoid, why different ones were doing what they were doing or looking at her, saying hello to her or not speaking to her. And so she kind of stayed in this constant mode of shifting mental states. She couldn't just be one way. Some of us, we fluctuate sometimes, right, in our mental states, and that's normal. What we think we thought then shifts. The impression that we got shifts. Sometimes even our emotions shift within a matter of seconds. That is fine. The scary part, though, about a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde disposition or personality is they don't necessarily have a balanced way that they're looking at things. So her mental shifts really kind of boxed her into a prison because she didn't trust anybody and she didn't like anybody. Why? Because her constantly shifting mental states made them good or evil. There's no gray. There was no in between. These kind of individuals tend to be explosive. They tend to be histrionic. They tend to be sometimes borderline. They have borderline personality traits. They also tend to have some elements of a dark empath. So we're talking about a marrying, if you will, or a connection of sociopathy and narcissism. The Machiavellian piece, so kind of like that internalized reward or stimulation that a person gets when they I'm going to say achieve something over somebody else, or maybe he won another man's wife over. That kind of energy that you get from doing really dark and evil things to other people, that Machiavellian piece of the puzzle may not be there with the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. But the connection of narcissism and sociopathy can be there for sure. The narcissism says, this is all about me. And if you don't meet my expectations of you, and if you don't meet my current needs, then I'm going to switch up on you. And then the sociopath part of that individual is that I am cold, callous, and self-centered, And that's why sometimes a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality can switch up on you just like that. And there's no empathy. There's no, I'm sorry. There's no guilt, right? Because sometimes at the core of who they are is a narcissistic sociopath-like disposition and mindset towards the world. They also tend to be very manipulative, and they create triangles. They know how to just pull people into complex situations and split you. And can you imagine the damage a person can do if they are friends, right, in a group? So an example of this could be somebody on your job. Maybe you have a person that is destabilized on your job. She tends to be pretty decent, but she goes around and gossips. She takes all the private news all around the office. She kind of gets the scoop, if you will. Then somehow she creates chaos. She gets people fired, right? And so she's kind of like an expert in triangulation and in manipulation. And let me also throw this in here as well. Mental division. She knows how to get into your mind and cause you, I'm saying you in general, not you guys, but cause you to see situations and other people a different way. I'm just going to talk to the boss. And by the end of that conversation, the boss is going to see things my way, right? They also tend to have poor perception of reality and memory. Can you imagine living in a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of mentality? It's a little bit hard to remember things when you've split everything in half from good to evil, and you've split everybody. Oh, she's no longer good because she put up a boundary, so she's evil, or, oh, I didn't know that she was married to so-and-so. Well, now she's dead to me. I had a client say that to me one time, that one of her neighbors married one of her ex-bosses. She's like, well, that woman is dead to me. And so most of these individuals do have a poor perception of reality because they can't be flexible. Again, they exist in really the middle of conflict within their mind, and that's the sad reality of that. Let me also say that they have a lot of chronic ambivalence. They're just in and out, up and down, around in circles. They don't know what to do, what not to do, who to believe, who not to believe. They tend to be very restless, in quotation marks, restless when it comes to kind of settling on a matter. They don't know how to have a one-tracked kind of a mind that processes in a mature way. They're kind of a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Disorganized and how they view the world and other people. That's the only way that I can explain this at this time to you guys. Let me also throw in here too, while we're on this, before I go back to the chat box And then I'm going to give you the last piece of this and we'll wrap up. Let me also say that there is some research that's suggesting, you tell me what you guys think about this. Some research suggests that splitting isn't always a negative thing, that we all tend to split from time to time. And if you don't split a person, you may become very naive and become a victim to them. So there is some research. And to be very honest, I only found 1 to 2 research articles on this from a research journal that shows that there is some argument that splitting isn't always a bad thing. I tend to see it professionally and personally as a bad thing. There's no gray. Everything is just black and white to you. No, that's not how that should be. But there's some research that says we all split. Maybe we do. I don't know. I'm not sure I see myself doing that. And I'm sure many of you on the channel would say the same thing. There's also some research that suggests splitting is adaptive, that you kind of have to split in order to protect yourself in an abusive home, right? I kind of have to see dad in black and white terms so that I don't see the gray of who he is and get sucked in and then I'm hurt, right? Or I have to see my sister as intelligent, not intelligent, manipulative, not manipulative. Because if I don't, I'll get sucked in and I'll become very confused about who she really is in my mind. So some research says it's adaptive. It protects you, and it can protect you in a very dysfunctional environment to split a person in half and to see them as being either all good or all evil, because it's protective. I don't know what I think about that. You guys tell me what you think of that. I don't know if I agree with that. Okay, let me briefly go back to the chat box, and then I'm going to give you how this impacts you, and then we're going to wrap up. I think we're doing good on timing, guys. My friend Shamita says, someone who exists within a fragmentation of their consciousness, that's intense. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If you are existing in a fragmented consciousness, what's likely to happen to you? Well, you're going to see a situation one way, right? And then maybe begin to see it a different way, right? And then you may settle on how you see something, but then wait a minute, because now there's a new part we have to consider. And so now you're going to see it that way. And then once you feel like you've settled on that, wait a minute, don't get comfy, because now we're going to see it another way. And so a fragmented consciousness is not stable. It's constantly shifting. And sometimes it is mood congruent, which means it is based on your mood, right? And so having a narcissistic or insensitive kind of a father, for example, who exists in a fragmented consciousness, that's who he is. He lives in this fragmented way that he sees the world. It's like a bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces all over the place, right? A father who exists this way can't be stable. And so everything is going to be like a roller coaster ride with him, because everything is a part of that fragmented consciousness that he may believe is a normal way of existing. Can you imagine that? Yeah. James McDonald says, yes, it is perfect timing, Tamara. Good. It is perfect timing. Jeremy Robinson says, I don't know if I welcomed you, Jeremy. So good to see you. Jeremy says, is it possible to have two parents like this? Because I think my mom and stepfather is like this. Yeah, definitely. It's possible to have both parents like this and a sibling, if we want to make it really juicy here. Yeah, you can definitely have two parents like this. And here's what's scary. Sometimes two people who have been together for quite a few years, they kind of become each other over time in some ways. And so if mom sees things in a fragmented way, then maybe dad does as well. And if he didn't so many years ago, maybe he is now, Ellie Wen says, I needed this badly. Oh, that's so good. I'm so glad. Good to hear that. And thank you so much, my friend Shamita. I appreciate that. Thank you. We are too. Annie Walker, good to see you, and happy Friday to you. Haven't seen you in a while. The Good Glow, good to see you, by the way, if I didn't say that. The Good Glow says, attempted to build a relationship with my aunt and noticed some triggering flaws, so I backed off. She recently called me, and you finished that, The Good Glow? I don't see it. Oh, Lord, The Good Glow. Did I lose it? I'm sorry. I don't see the other piece of this. I'll try to find it, okay? I'll try to find it. At the edge says conscience seared. Yes, it is seared. Like a seared steak with those nice grill lines. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Jermaine, hello. Good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Ronald Zion, hello. Welcome. Thank you for saying that. Totally depraved. Yeah. Yeah. Ronald Zion, good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. If I didn't say that. Babs, hello, welcome. I'm gonna put your comment up on the screen. Good to see you as well. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Miss Janine, good to see you here tonight. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. Miss Janine says, my family always brings the past into every situation. I hope that before I'm completely old and gray, they step into reality. I really love your channel and your good suggestions. Thank you so much for that. That's humbling. I appreciate you for that. And I hope they do wake up, right? You know, it's kind of like, you know, you're asking in a sense for them to just wake themselves up before it's too late, you know. Nobody, hello and welcome. I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you here tonight. Yeah, Laura O'Neill and James McDonald are talking about Carl Jung. Yep. Carl Jung was on to something. For those of you who have studied philosophy and psychology and existentialism like me, you probably know that almost all philosophers and all psychologists or theorists tend to have some common thread to each of their theories, right? So Carl Jung had a little bit of an interesting theory that could also support Sigmund Freud's theory, that can also support a philosopher's theory, you know, Socrates and Plato, and I can't think of some of the Kierkegaard. Those philosophers kind of had a similar mindset to Sigmund Freud and to Piaget and to Carl Jung. So it's kind of interesting how they all they're in the same realm of exploration. You know, I'll put it that way. Give it a think. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Give it a think says, it's a feeling in my stomach when one of these Jekyll Hyde people turns on me. Been a lot of them over my lifetime. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, sometimes you don't see it getting ready to happen, right? Have you ever been in a relationship? And I know I have in the past, a friendship, a coworker, a romance, where you think you and the person are on the same page, right? You've observed them like we all do. We observe each other, especially when there's an investment, right? The investment is a family relationship. The investment is a really close friendship. The investment is a romance that could lead to marriage. An investment, you put it in a sense into the relationship. There's something in here that I want, and there's something in here that I'm going to get back for being in this, right? So in a sense, we're kind of always evaluating each other to see where we're at. So have you been in a situation or a relationship where you think you two are on the same page, and next thing you know, they're going this way and you're just still going straight thinking, where are you? Right? And that can be terrifying. And this is specifically for you, give it a think. That can be terrifying, right? Because you guys are going forward all along and on the same page, and then whoop, they're over there somewhere. And you're standing there trying to figure out, why are they over there in the bushes? You know, what is this? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, it's tiring. It's tiring. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Ajax 3. Welcome. Good to see you, and welcome to the channel. And I would like to think so one day. Thank you so much for that. AM, hello, welcome. Good to see you, and welcome to the channel. AM says, narc neighbors. Yeah. Ronald Zion says, hi, Tim. Hi, Ronald Zion. Good to see you. Although I already welcomed you. So Ronald Zion says, have you ever had a client that needed spiritual deliverance as opposed to immediate therapy? Oh, yeah. Oh yes. There are people who would benefit less from therapy and more from spiritual deliverance, right? Because therapy works with your mind. It works with your sense of self. It works with your ability to conceptualize your weaknesses, your needs, your strengths, your ability to change things and alter things and process things. And some people are not there. They can't, they don't have whatever it takes, that internal consciousness, awareness, that ability to just go within. They don't have that access to that higher processing, right? The metacognition, they don't have any of that. And so when you have somebody come into therapy, and most therapists have experienced this, those who don't talk about it because they don't want to be seen as a certain way, and those who have seen it and haven't been heard, So I think those of us who are professionals, Ronald Zion, we've seen it. Oh, we've seen it. But how do you document that in a clinical note? My client doesn't have the cognitive ability to think about their thinking. So there's no ability to embrace metacognition. There's no ability to look within. Their self-consciousness is minimal. They don't have the ability to sit in a session and learn. They don't have the ability to process other people and themselves and what happens between them and other people. So how do you put that in a note that may be pulled by insurance, that may be pulled by an attorney, that may be pulled by a healthcare system? You can't. So what do? You sit and do therapy with the client, the patient, hoping that somehow you can knock in there and say, okay, let's get some understanding of self and others. Let's start talking about building self-awareness, right? We try to turn it a little bit in a positive way and try to help the client. But to be very honest, there are some clients who simply are not there. And so they engage in behaviors, they express themselves in emotional ways that are sometimes far beyond what a therapist can therapize. Can I say it that way? I just made up a new word tonight, guys, right? But therapy isn't for everyone, and therapy doesn't meet everyone where they're at. What do you do with the client who has an intellectual disability and cannot make sense out of therapy? How do you reach them? Not with therapy. So yes, that's my short answer, Ronald Zion. And I used to work back in 2017, 2016 in a psychiatric hospital and in a residential treatment facility for kids and teens, where I've seen kids growl. I've seen kids bark like a dog. I've seen kids spit. I've seen kids throw and tear up the Holy Bible. I've seen it all. Okay. And part of it has traumatized me, let me tell you. But the other piece of that showed me over time, and many of my colleagues, that sometimes therapy is just not it. So then how do you reach them? And sometimes they need quote unquote deliverance in a different way. And it isn't sitting before a therapist talking about what's going on in their mind. I love my field. I am passionate, as you guys see, about my field, but within reason, right? Siobhan, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello, good to see you back. I haven't seen you in a long time. Always good to see you. And let me go back to Ronald Zion for a minute. Ronald Zion, that was a great question. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm not afraid to talk about it in those ways. Some therapists are like, no, I'm not going to even touch that. I don't mind because we don't know what we should know at all times about human nature, right? We're evolving human beings. We need to have an open mind, Felique says, some of my group home staff, I have a very hard time communicating, and 1 minute nice, 1 minute mean. And I hate that sometimes. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's like, what's changing you towards me, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Andrew Mercer's comment. Felix, let me just say this to you before I go on for a second. Expect that in a group home, right? I think you may have said in one of the live chats, I think you said you were 18 or you were a young man. So kind of expect that, in a group home. It's a very difficult environment. So maybe in some ways you don't have to take that personal, but it does sting. It does sting, right? Andrew, Don't want to hit that. Andrew Mercer says, I'll leave the psychology to you, so I'll keep it light. Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate all of you. All of you teach me as I'm trying to teach and share with you. Stephanie Thomas, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Stephanie Thomas says, delusion causes them to gloss over and try to pick up in the broken space and move on. Like there's absolutely no brokenness. Sometimes a delusion is a false belief that's held to be true, like a conviction, despite evidence to the contrary. There's all this evidence over here that doesn't support what you think is happening, but you're going to still think it, no matter what happens and no matter what you do or say. Mending Roots with Lady Lux. Oh my goodness, that's cute. You're going to get up there with Starburst and Lemon Squeeze. Welcome. Good to see you. And welcome to the channel. Since I finally caught a live. Yeah, I love this. Yay. I love this channel. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Okay. Kimmy63, hello and welcome. I remember you leaving some comments in one of my previous live chats. So glad that you are here with us. Good to see you. Okay, bear with me as I go through this. Is this Xerox or Xrox? Not sure. Yeah, not sure how to say that, but welcome to the channel. Thank you for your comment. Good to see you. I'm gonna say Xerox because I can't see how you would say that any other way. Xerox says, at first you're so awesome and easy to get along with them. All of a sudden you're too much, and they'd never want someone of your character around them, and they refuse to forgive you. Kind of twisted. Sometimes. And we do have to be careful. And I probably should have said this as a disclaimer at the beginning of the live chat, that sometimes there are people who they're going along with you and they think they like you and you get along, and then you're moving on and they're moving backwards. Why? Because now they've seen something in you that they're like, no, thank you. And that is normal. We all do it. It's to be expected. So that can get mixed in there as well and make this whole concept difficult. But I totally get what you're saying. You're welcome. You're welcome, Average Joe. No problem. Okay, let's keep moving. Trying to get through some of this. I hate ending a live chat and it's like 900 million of you waiting on a response. So forgive me for that, but just know I look at your comments later. So you're being heard and you're being seen. Star, welcome. Good to see you. And welcome to tonight's live chat. Star says, thanks for explaining the splitting behavior, Tamara. You're welcome. I often wondered if it was used as a deliberate control mechanism or unconscious behavior. It's actually both. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's both. Star goes on and says, mom does this and dad enabled it 100%. Yes, it is a control mechanism. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism. Sometimes it's part of a character pathology. So there's something wrong with your character and your personality. And other times it is unconscious behavior. It's this disposition that has served these individuals. Once splitting and over idolizing and devaluing no longer serves a purpose, the person abandons it, So sometimes it is. That's so awesome. I'm going to start your comment and the rest of you who are saying some really good things tonight. Clandestine Girl 16X. That's wonderful to hear. You're welcome. You're welcome. That's the purpose of the channel, to give you the language and to illuminate, right? So that's awesome. I'm always grateful when, let's say, for example, I'm going to my PCP to get a flu shot or something. And she's like, have you thought about this in this way? And then I'm sitting there as the therapist who's been doing this for 15 years. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, wait a minute, why does this sound so illuminating for my PCP? I have no idea why getting a flu shot meant this much now than it ever has. It's almost like somebody else taking what you already know and twisting it for you in a way that just feeds you better. I think my PCP wants to be a therapist. We were talking about my current private practice and, talking about clients, relationships and all of that. And she's like, have you thought about it this way? And I'm just like, oh, I didn't think of that. So clandestine girl 16X, it's wonderful when somebody can come along, right? And say, look at it this way. Doesn't this click better? I have those people in my world. I'm very grateful for that. Foxy Fair 123 says, wow, I'm so glad to know that you're a Christian. Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It guides my footsteps, right? I have to. If I don't, then I don't understand me, right? Like for those of us who kind of pursue that realm, it's a nice way to say, you know what, something bigger than me has to guide me so I can understand all the things that we deal with in life, Okay, enough of my chit-chatting. Need a lawyer. Oh my goodness. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Welcome to the channel. Says they have no boundaries. They will repeat anything anyone said about them. Sometimes. Axe to Edge says character versus personality pathology. Is there a difference or are you using it interchangeably? I'm using it interchangeably. I'm glad you asked that question. Axe to Edge. Yes. Character versus personality pathology. Same thing. Personality disorder, character pathology, character disturbance, personality disturbance, all the same thing. Yeah, I should have explained that. So thank you so much for that. Stephen R. Good to see you and welcome to the channel and welcome to tonight's live chat. Rochella, good to see you. Welcome. Rochella says people who have no gray area way of thinking are exhausting to be around. That's very true. That's true. Yeah, that's so true. I agree with that. Yeah, so one of my brothers has that mentality of everything is black and white, and he and I sometimes will go at it, okay? And many times I'm like, Ryan, you are getting on my nerves. Stop saying that. And then I try to like open his view, and he goes right back to black and white thinking, and I'm like, look here, you're getting on my last nerve. We're gonna stop talking in about 2 seconds because you're getting on my last nerve. You know how siblings are, At the end of the day, we love each other, but my God, is he frustrating. Nobody, I just saw you say, man, tears just fell out of my eyes out of nowhere. Well, maybe that means something's happening, and that's a good thing. M and Odell, good to see you. Welcome back. Says there's nothing spiritual about weaponized religion. Yeah, you got that right. Yep. Religious hypocrites, religious people who are arrogant and prideful, religious narcissism, and weaponized religion. Turns me off every time. Mama Black Sheep, I think I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Says, I always appreciate a professional that has the education and ability to merge science with spirituality. I was raised fundamentalist Christian, which neglected the psychology altogether. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I agree. You kind of have to blend the two, right? All right. I'm not going to even get into that whole argument. I was going to bring up philosophy and all that. We'll be on here till 9 p.m. Eastern time. I don't want to do that. So I digress. One more comment, and then I'm going to go back to the content. We're going to wrap up. James McDonald says the damage the splitting behavior from parents does to the child's mind and psyche is often debilitating and incomprehensible. Yes, it is. It's very debilitating, and it can trigger complex PTSD symptoms. Now, let's jump into this, okay, guys? So how does this impact you? Well, let's start with shifts in your own perception of reality and kind of in your own beliefs, your own ideas, your own understanding of who you are. If you're growing up in a household with parents like this, it's really easy for them to kind of box you into a corner, tell you who you are, and then dare you to come out of that corner and correct them. So what happens over time? Well, you begin to kind of reconstruct different elements of your character, different elements of your consciousness, different elements of who you thought you were, who you think you're becoming, right? And so that can be very, very debilitating to you. It can also be a really, I'm going to say, evil way of kind of shutting your individual mind down, shutting your feelings down, invalidating you and telling you to go along, right? So you may develop over time some shifts in your own mind, in your own heart. As a matter of fact, research it kind of still leans towards borderline personality as being the result of a traumatic and dysfunctional home life. So if that is the reality for some patients, for some clients, for some people, then it makes sense, right? That over time, if you live in a household with somebody who splits, you live in a household with a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, mom or dad, siblings, right? Then it's possible that over time you can develop this fear of abandonment, right? You can develop the process from borderline personality disorder of shifting your own minds and thoughts about people all the time. You may also find yourself kind of sink into over idolizing humans and people, and then finding out that they are only human, and then now devaluing them. I find it very humbling, and I'm sure a select few of other people do as well, when you're like a celebrity to them, or you're like somebody they highly respect. I truly appreciate all of you and all of my clients who highly regard me, but that can be sometimes delusional for some people, and it can go into the realm of stalking. It can go into the realm of disregarding your boundaries. It can go into the realm of, I idolize you way up here, almost to the level of a god. And so now that I see that you haven't called me back on the phone, you haven't responded to me, you haven't accepted my invitation for a date, you haven't seemed to really like me or put attention into me, now I'm going to devalue you because of what you did to me, right? And so that's kind of like that borderline splitting disposition. And it can happen. There may also be an inability to fully accept your perception of reality. If you're in a relationship with someone who splits or is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, 1 minute they're with you, next minute they're not. 1 minute they're positive, next minute they're not. You may find it really hard over time because they kind of possess your mind sometimes. Think about an abusive Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde as a husband, as a wife. They're constantly talking to you and talking to you and talking to you and fussing and fighting with you. So when it comes to other places in your world, you may kind of step back and ask yourself, is that really what's happening over there? Or am I doing what my husband said I do all the time? Or am I doing what my wife said that I do all the time, right? You may also develop attachment fears and anxieties over time. You may also have what we call stress-induced dissociation. Stress-induced dissociation, where you kind of, you go along in daily life, and something that's really stressful to you, that's repetitive, what happens automatically to a mind that feels trapped? It finds an escape. And so the escape may be dissociation. Have you ever had an experience? I know I have in my college days. I was just being gifted with my first car from my late grandmother. And I was going to a college, and I felt like I really was held to a high standard by my mom and my grandma. And I thought, I can't wreck my car. I cannot wreck this car. And, I didn't even give anybody a ride in my car. I was just like, I have to prove to my mom and my grandmother that I really appreciate what they've done for me. So I was really kind of stressed with my academics, because I would be doing like 16, 17, 18 classes a semester. And so I was really, really kind of like this neurotic overachiever as a young person in college. And I remember getting behind the wheel of my car, and I'm driving from one campus to the next, because I took classes at my home college and took classes at another college. And I'm just thinking to myself, I got to get to the other school. I got to get to the other school in one piece. And I was under so much pressure from working a job, doing an internship, taking 16, 18 courses per semester, trying to graduate in 3 years. And then on top of that, being entrusted with a brand new car and a really expensive school from my mom and my grandmother, that I remember driving from one campus to the next. But if once I got to the other campus and turned the car off and parked and turned the car off, if you asked me, what person did you pass? What stop sign did you stop at? What light did you drive on? Was it a red or a yellow light or a green light? What were your surroundings? I couldn't tell you. And it terrified me, because I couldn't understand, how did I just lose a chunk of a 25-minute drive? I couldn't remember. And so we call that stress-induced dissociation. And it can happen when you're under extreme stress. And that was me as a college student. I was under extreme stress. And I totally lost connection with driving from one school to the next. You couldn't ask me what street I turned down, what stop sign I stopped at, right? If you're growing up in a house with somebody who splits, or if you're in a relationship with somebody who's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, they can have your brain under so much distress that you totally lose chunks of what's happening to you throughout the day. Does that make sense, guys? And it's not like me where I was driving in a dissociative state. It might be I'm going my whole entire day in a dissociative state. I'm at the dinner table trying to have dinner with my family in a dissociative state, right? So you may want to watch that. Sometimes that's a really good sign that you are under way too much stress, right? So stress-induced dissociation. Figured I would break that down for you because a lot of people are like, what does that actually mean? You don't have to have dissociative identity disorder. You don't even have to have a mental health condition to have the experience of stress-induced dissociation. Lastly, in this category, before I go back to the chat box and wrap things up, you may have difficulty over time with cognitive dissonance. It's really hard to hold two opposing views in your mind at the same time. Splitting down the middle, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde typically functions on black and white terms. So it is a kind of, or a sort of, cognitive dissonance. There's we call it a synchronic ambivalence, right? Or a diachronic ambivalence. I had to think about which one I was going to bring up. Synchronic ambivalence is I kind of have this negative and positive view of experiences, attitudes, personalities, people. We call that synchronic ambivalence. It's kind of like, I have this black and white view of attitudes, mindsets, personalities. I have this black and white view of things. Diachronic ambivalence says, I live in this ambivalent state of ideas. I'm kind of stuck between two or more opposing views. And it's hard for me to kind of figure out which idea should go here and there. And so it's a kind of cognitive dissonance. It's being stuck between two opposing views. Okay, guys, let's pause here at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. This is complex, right? I literally have taken the meat of the meat of the conversation, of the research, of the psychology is what I'm trying to say, and kind of laid it out for you. But could we talk about this Monday through Friday? Yes, because there's different components of this that we can tease apart. We can psychoanalyze, but I'm going to leave it here. Join me tomorrow in tomorrow's live chat. I'm going to be talking about those individuals, family members, people that you're around, when they engage in a process that's known as demand and withdrawal. So I'm going to demand something from you, and when I don't get it, I'm going to withdraw from you. And that is going to look a variety of different ways. Can I say that? Well, I can say it in tonight's live chat, but it's going to look different, and there's going to be different components and pieces to that. So come join me in tomorrow's live chat. Okay, let me just answer a few questions, guys. And then I'm going to wrap up. Vincent Packer, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Welcome to the channel. You're welcome. That's amazing. Wow. I always feel like 31 or older, it's good that you're learning about it, no matter how old you are, So that's wonderful. Billie Jean, how did I miss you? Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. You are the one that keeps literally all the data and statistics of what's going on the channel. See, here you go again. I love it. Thank you. Christina LZ, hello and welcome. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a little while. Doing well. Thank you. Hope you are as well. Good to see you. Trying to figure it out. Good to see you. Join me tomorrow. Trying to figure it out. Billie Jean says, do you believe in love after love? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Why? No, I don't really know. I'll have to come back to this at another time. I don't know. I have to think about it. I have to think about it. Hannibal, can I say that? Hello and welcome. Glad to see you. I mean, so you're saying stop worrying about splitting and protect yourself from people who have too many bad qualities. Well, sometimes bad qualities are found in splitting, and sometimes splitting is a natural occurrence to show you the bad qualities of that person. So to me, it's all one and the same, but I totally get where you're coming from. Kev Dower, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. We're going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. Coffee Bean Lee has my view and says, I don't think splitting is safe or healthy for anyone, even if the person lives alone. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. You are not, I agree with that. You are not whining nobody, not at all. Not at all. Trying to figure it out. Let me just say thank you to you for gifting 2 people tonight. I think gifted 1 membership. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate the support of the channel. And for those of you who are members, thank you so very much. There's going to be perks this year, so stay tuned. You also, when you become a member and you buy the top tier, sometimes you can, depending on what tier you're in, because I think there's like 3 levels, I offer consultations, I think up to 3 per year. So for those of you who are becoming members, thank you so much for that. And wait and see, the perks are coming. It's my way of saying thank you. That's really what it is. Spiky Potato, you're another one. I love, love, love your screen name. Good to see you. And Spiky Potato is so happy that they got a membership. Trying to figure it out. Breezy, stop giving people heart attacks. They're so excited. Spiky Potato says, thank you for the membership. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Trying to figure it out. We appreciate you. Okay. That kindness needs to be recognized. Patrick Black One says Tamara's on fire. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to go take a nap. The Good Glow says, my aunt told me she was going to place my hand in the microwave because I hadn't told her that rather harsh. And she says she was just joking. Her energy reminds me of my mother. Ooh, yeah. Joking or not, that's kind of cold, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, the Good Glow. That's not okay. Nita Lawyer says, most therapists don't understand narcissism. The narcissist psychopath gets their revenge first, and you don't have any clue about it. Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Nobody says, you all stay strong. You all be at peace. That's wonderful. Thank you for saying that. Tanya Smith, or Tanyan Smith, Tanyan, I'm going to say that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Good to see you. Welcome back tonight. Guys, for those of you who are, is it Sana? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Sana, welcome. Good to see you as well. For those of you who I haven't been able to get to, forgive me. I truly appreciate your super chats, your memberships, your comments, your love and dedication for the channel, me, support, and the content. Thank you so much. I'm going to continue to produce content. It does supercharge my career. You know, it really does. It gives me that energy so that I can get through the next week and the next week. So I'm learning, you're learning, and I just think it's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Come join me again tomorrow live if you want to learn about those kind of individuals who demand and withdraw. We're going to talk a lot about what they do and how to kind of overcome that a little bit. So I hope to see you then. In the meantime, have a wonderful Friday night. Good night, guys.